Okay, welcome everyone. I think we're ready to start. It's 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. And could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Edwards, Councilmember Hagley,
Here.
Vice Mayor Harrod,
Here.
Mayor Mitchell.
Here. And if you could join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. So thank you. I just want to note that Councilmember Kelly is recovering from surgery. And I also want to thank Vice Mayor Harrod for filling in for me last week, and the council in general for managing a fairly dicey meeting and getting through it with a lot of, good graces and reaching good conclusions. So thank you for that. And then, so if I could have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we did not have a closed session. Announcements and presentations. So we'll start off with recognition of city employees with milestone anniversaries. City Manager Kay.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my privilege this evening to say a few words about Community Services Director Mark Thiemig, who is this quarter celebrating 10 years, 1 decade of service with the city. So much to be proud of and much that we can be really thankful to Mark for his services to the community. But a few things that really come to mind for me when I think about Mark's role with the city and his accomplishments. First off, I think obviously is amazing events. Our community services department, I believe, is the best in the business, the best I've seen of a city in terms of putting on amazing community events, and with Mark's fingerprints all over that. Classics in this community, the Tuesdays in the Plaza, 4th of July celebrations and fireworks have gotten bigger and better and more festive. And over the years, I know we've also taken on new events that celebrate different aspects of our community. Mary Healdsburg, Dia de los Muertos. The list goes on. We've talked up here in this room sometimes about how we struggle at this point. We're so known for doing wonderful events that we struggle to say no. But what a great problem to have, that we're constantly looking for new ways to celebrate community, and so much of that traces back to Mark and his ambition and his creativity and his refusal to settle for pretty good. As a city manager, I'll confess there are times when I'll say, well, can't we just do this the easy way and keep it simple? And that doesn't fly with Mark Thiemig. That doesn't fly with our community services department. And that's a great thing to have in a community when you're really pushed to do things at an A+ level. So amazing events are one thing I think of with Mark's service. Another is our facilities and our projects. We celebrated just a couple of things very recently. The Fitch Mountain improvements just done amazingly well that improved trail access and the dog park. We have just across the street an absolutely amazing testament to community in the Foley Family Community Pavilion that is flying through the construction phase and is something we'll celebrate this year. Very much a function of Mark's hard work and his creativity. The list could go on and on in terms of our facilities. So I think of events and I think of great parks and community spaces, but I also think we tend to think about those special projects. But another thing I think Mark is really known for and deserves a lot of credit for is just the day-to-day operations of our community services department too. For those of us who don't do it that often, if you go by the community center on a Tuesday afternoon, or you go to the senior center, just the day-to-day programming that community services provides to our residents of all ages, of all backgrounds, is really incredible. Just the vibrancy of those facilities that we have and the programming. And so while I think of those events and special projects that we do, I know Mark's really takes a lot of pride in just the day-to-day operation of serving our community. And so he's a really great member of our team. As I said, he's creative. He pushes the envelope. Mark often says, go big or go home. He's not somebody who settles for day-to-day work. And that pushes all of us, I think. So I'm grateful to be able to watch the work he brings in, and I'm appreciative of the impact that that has on our organization and our team. We all see it. We see one of the leaders in our organization not settling for just okay, but always pushing for excellence. And that's a real testament to his approach to this work and something that we're all better off for. So for 10 years, I've only seen a little less than half of it, but for 10 years of really great service to this community and this organization, on behalf of our staff, I'll just say thank you to Mark, and looking forward to everything that's coming from here on out as well. Guessing that Mark would take this moment to say a couple of words. Thank you.
I will. First of all, I don't do it myself, right? We have an entire team and great support from other departments in the city, and it's really truly a special place to live. I don't think any of you were on council when I got here, but the former city manager on my first day gave me 5 #1 priorities. And I said, well, how can they all be #1 priorities? He said, well, you got to figure that out. And the ownership of Fitch Mountain, the ownership of Healdsburg Ridge, the completion of the access improvement projects, the Fully Family Community Pavilion, growing our programs, those were all part of my 5 #1 priorities that I got. It's a great place. For those of you who have not lived outside of California or outside of Sonoma County, it truly is special here. The people here are amazing, especially in Healdsburg. They want to do good things. That is challenging sometimes. And we try to deliver as much as we can. So I appreciate the recognition. It's been a fast 10 years. And there's some really cool things happening, in the future too. So not just the past. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mark. The council would like to say something to Mark. We would like to get a picture of you. We'll do this before the proclamations with the council. It's good. You guys, did you want to say anything? Yeah, okay. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want to add in that when I got involved in city government, I was at the Parks Commission. And so Mark was the guy who showed me those ropes. And so I've had the pleasure of working somewhat closely with him for a long time now. And he just never stops impressing me. He's super knowledgeable. He knows his job so well. He knows the city so well, even though you were pretty new here when I started on the commission. And but you jumped right in on it, and you've always given 110%, and it really shows in everything that the department has done for the community. And I just want to add also that I know how much the staff appreciates you, and how much the community appreciates you. That you really do have a direct commitment to and relationship with so many individuals in this town. And that's really a special thing, and it really shows in the quality of the work that you do. Thank you, Mark.
Councilmember Higley?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, having worked with you for, I guess now is the 9th year, I've seen, we see the public facing side, but I've seen, how you navigate. You get a lot of input, a lot of outreach from the community, kind of getting pulled in different directions sometimes. And I've really been impressed with how you are able to navigate through that. And we've had some pretty complicated, you remember the top of Fitch Mountain was somebody thought a resort was going to go up there, and like the room was packed and everybody's losing their minds because they thought, the city council is going to put a resort at the top of Fitch Mountain. So navigating the firestorms that erupt from time to time on certain issues, I think, I've really been impressed. And especially on the Fully Family Pavilion, that was quite the challenging thing for us to all navigate through, and just watching all your work, the research, the backup behind the kind of the thought process of what could be there and the vision that could be there. And I think you pulled an example out of Kansas City that, just those kind of things stick with me, and I notice it. And I just wanted to thank you for, that attention to detail and being able to navigate through some of those things. It's a special talent.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yeah, I want to thank you for not only doing the events that are well scheduled, but the ones that pop up kind of last minute. That really shows your skills when you took care of the blood route, the change in that last year, and just being able to adjust on the fly, which is excellent skills set for that. Just wanted to thank you. Having everything look seamless. It just goes, everything is so smooth that people maybe not even know how much time and effort you put into it, but I know you're putting a lot of effort in. So I want to thank you.
And I add my thanks too. Yeah, you're an amazing individual, and you obviously love your work, though. I think, right? It seems you go at it with a lot of gusto most of the time. Yeah, not always, I'm sure. Just like any job, but I appreciate that too. And can we get a picture with you and any of your staff that would like to come up?
Once again, I don't like to be in the spotlight, so I didn't invite them tonight.
Well, I see a couple out there.
They're welcome to join, but
Yeah,
like make it the thing.
come on up.
Yeah. I know, right? Crazy.
Okay, and now we have some fun proclamations to do as well. So the first one is proclamation recognizing May 4th through 10th, 2025 as Public Service Recognition Week. Councilmember Edwards?
Yeah, yes. Whereas Public Service Recognition Week is celebration of the first full week in May nationwide, and it's time set aside to honor and celebrate those who serve our nation, federal, state, county, and local government employees. And whereas each day employees in our federal, state, county, and local government strive to perform their jobs with integrity, competence, and professionalism, demonstrating a deep commitment to their community and the people they serve. And whereas our community is served every day by City of Healdsburg staff, including the City Manager's Office, Community Development Department, Housing Department, Finance Department, Fire Department, Police Department, Public Works Department, Electrical Department, Water and Wastewater Department, and Community Service Departments. And in the face of unprecedented challenges over the last few years, the dedicated public employees of the City of Healdsburg have consistently risen to the moment, always answering the call to serve our community. And whereas public employees are the lifeblood of our democracy and choose careers in government, not only as jobs, but as communities committed to serve. And whereas the public employees of the City of Healdsburg are committed to exhibiting the highest standard of professional excellence, creativity, skills, and customer service. And whereas the efficiency of government relies on public employees and volunteers who provide service in the quality and quantity required and expected by the public. And the City of Healdsburg recognizes these generous contributions of time and talent by public employees and community volunteers and importance of service they render. And whereas all citizens are encouraged to recognize the accomplishments and contribution of government employees at all levels, federal, state, county, and local. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg hereby recognizes May 4th through 10th, 2025 as Public Service Recognition Week in the City of Healdsburg.
Thank you. And we have Human Resources Manager Nicole Lopez and her staff, if they'd like to come up. We're going to do pictures after all the proclamations are read, but we want to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the, oh, is it on? There we go.
Push the button, the green button.
It's on. Can you hear me?
Okay, you.
Great. Thank you. On behalf of the Employee Appreciation Committee, I just wanted to say thank you to the council for recognizing Public Service Week with this proclamation and recognizing all of the hard work that our staff puts in every day to serve this wonderful community. Thank you.
Thank you. And so next we have proclamation honoring the Housing Element Work Group members, or I think it's known as HUGE as well. Councilmember
huge-
Hagley, the huge. Councilmember Hagley.
Thank you. Healdsburg's done a lot related to housing, and it could not have been done without the housing element work group. So I'm very happy to acknowledge the members that contributed and took time from their busy schedules. So this is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg honoring the members of the Healdsburg Housing Element Work Group for their contributions to the City of Healdsburg. Whereas the state of California requires all cities and counties to prepare a housing element as part of their general plan to address the housing needs of all residents and meet regional housing targets every 8 years. And the City of Healdsburg convened a housing element work group, also known as HUGE, composed of dedicated community members to assist with the development of the city's 6th cycle housing element update from 2023 to 2031, and acknowledges the outstanding contributions of current members Dean Clatter, Deb Kravitz, Jim Hyde, and Stephen Barber, as well as former members Ari Rosen, Carrie Hunt, Emily Podolak, Erica Valdovinos, and Jesus Guzman, whose dedication, insight, and participation were instrumental in achieving state certification on June 29, 2023. And the members generously volunteered their time to thoughtfully engage on complex housing issues, reflect the diverse voices of Healdsburg community, and help identify strategies to address housing needs across all income levels. And their contributions not only inform the housing element update, but the HUGE continued its work beyond certification, helping to shape future city housing policies, including efforts to address middle-income housing needs, expand homeless services, and advance Healdsburg's broader goals of equity, sustainability, and livability. And the City Council wishes to recognize and express its sincere appreciation to the members of the Housing Element Work Group for their service, collaboration, and commitment. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg hereby honors and thanks the members of the Housing Element Work Group for their gift of service to the city and its residents.
Thank you. And Deb Kravitz, who's the chair of the Housing Element Work Group, will receive the proclamation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. It was absolutely my honor and my pleasure to serve on the HUGE and to serve as the chair for most of the duration of our work time. The issues that a housing element has to grapple with are not always the most exciting. It's very formulaic, it's very technical, but it was such an amazing group of community members that served on the HUGE, and we had such good support from the city staff and the City Council that we actually expanded our role and took it upon ourselves not just to meet the minimum requirements that were imposed on us, our RHNA numbers from ABAG, but we really did try to find, identify the needs and the policies and programs that would actually address the needs of what Healdsburg residents needed and what they have repeatedly told us they needed. So thank you and thanks city staff for granting us the leeway to do that. And I'm proud of everything that we accomplished. So thank you.
Thank you. You all did great work. We really appreciate it. Stick around for the photos after the next proclamation. Thank you. And we need to thank Stephen Sotomayor as well as the housing director, right? Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to underscore something that Deb mentioned there, and that's that the housing element, it is very technical. It accomplished its goals, but it really did include a very a vision of the city that I think was really sensitive to what our needs really are and what the community wanted. And so it didn't come just as a work list or something that checked a box for the state or anything like that. It really became a valuable planning document, in my opinion. And there's just tons of great resource there for us as leaders. And now, and I think even going into the future, that it's something that we should refer to because it really does give us some important guidance for housing in this community. You know, some of it hasn't been as easy to act on as we'd hoped, but it's still, I think there's a lot of wisdom in there, and I appreciate all the work that went into that.
Thank you for that. Yes. So, okay, so our next proclamation is recognizing May 2025 as Bike Month and May 15th, 2025, next Thursday, I believe, as Bike to Work Day. Vice Mayor Herod.
Thank you. Proclamation of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg recognizing May 15, 2025 as Bike to Work Day and the month of May 2025 as Bike Month in the City of Healdsburg. Whereas the bicycle is a healthy, convenient, financially and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent tool for recreation and enjoyment of the City of Healdsburg's scenic beauty, local attractions, and friendly neighborhoods. And whereas Sonoma County's roads and trails attract bicyclists each year, providing economic health, transportation, tourism, and scenic benefits. Whereas creating a bicycling friendly community has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, growing the economy, improving traffic safety, supporting student health and learning, and reducing pollution, congestion, and wear and tear on our roads and streets. And whereas since 2001, the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition has been promoting bicycling for transportation and recreation through education, encouragement, and advocacy. And whereas thousands of local school children have received classroom instruction in bicycle and pedestrian safety and participated in skill-building bike rodeos facilitated by the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition's Safe Routes to School program. Whereas the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition Smart Cycling program has taught bicycle safety skills to thousands of adults. And whereas the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition has produced numerous events and activities encouraging residents to ride a bike, including the Bike Advocacy Summit, Bike Expos, Cyclovias, bike film nights, community rides, giveaways of bicycles and bicycle safety equipment, repair clinics, and Bike to Work Month. And whereas the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, the League of American Bicyclists, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area will be promoting bicycling during the month of May 2025. And whereas throughout the month of May, the residents of Healdsburg and its visitors can experience the joys of bicycling through free educational programs, challenges, and events organized by these groups. And whereas these groups are also promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce collisions, injuries, and fatalities, and improve health and safety for everyone on the road. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg does hereby recognize the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition for its contributions to the community and proclaims May 15, 2025 as Bike to Work Day and the month of May 2025 as Bike Month in the City of Healdsburg, and encourages all residents to participate in the special observance.
Thank you. And Eris Weaver from the Sonoma County Bike Coalition is here to receive the proclamation.
Not yet.
Oh, there we go. I'm joined today by one of my board members and Healdsburg resident, David Majerus, as well as a bunch of other of our members and folks from Move Healdsburg to celebrate this month. 25 years ago, a group of cycling club members decided to channel their frustration, their anger, their fear, and their sadness into what became the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. After several high-profile deaths and injuries of collisions between cars and cyclists and a lack of facilities here, folks got together to make our streets safer so that not only are the people who are already, you know, the spandex crowd get out there and ride, but that we can make things safer for everyone. There's been a lot of progress since then. We see more miles of bike paths, bike lanes, more bike parking. But one of the things that I think is just as important, if not as much, is I think we have a much larger proportion of the community. In fact, I think possibly even a majority that are on board with us, that see better bike infrastructure not as an inconvenience to them when they want to drive, but that by making the streets safer so that more people feel empowered to choose to bike, walk, take transit, get somewhere without a car, as something that makes the world safer for all of us and increases everybody's quality of life. There's still work to do, and we will, of course, continue to kind of push at you and the other cities and ask for the moon, even when we know you can't afford it. But we do appreciate the partnerships and the collegiality that we've all created together. Thank you for this proclamation, and I hope to see you all out on your bikes this month.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
You mentioned Move Healdsburg, but I just wanted to shine some light on this local group that's evolved in the last year or so, and all the great work they're doing to encourage cycling in Healdsburg. It's been really fantastic to join them when I can, and certainly am a cheerleader from afar when I can't. And so thank you. I'm looking at Judy. I know she's one of the main leaders for that group here, and so thank you very much for the work you've been doing.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll go ahead then and bring back up our Human Resources Manager, Nicole Lopez, and anyone else on the committee that's here tonight to receive their proclamation and photo. Who's got that one?
All right. All the cyclists.
All the cyclists. Come on that way.
Oh. Oh, did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay. Get over it.
Yeah. Well, so we want to see the proclamation too. There we go. Okay, everybody turn slightly to your left.
We need to get everybody in and maybe double up a little bit.
We don't like each other.
Okay. Yep. Do
you two want to move over here next to Richard for me, please? Yeah. Ready? One, two, three. One might be.
Or if there's no time, there's no time. Okay.
On behalf of Move Healdsburg, I want to thank the City of Healdsburg for recognizing May as National Bike Month. This is a wonderful opportunity to highlight the benefits of cycling and encourage more of our community members to choose active transportation. We are especially excited and optimistic about the progress we are seeing here in Healdsburg. The adoption of our new active transportation plan is a huge step forward, and it's clear that the city is truly invested in making this vision a reality. We are encouraged by the number of projects already in the works, from improvements along Healdsburg Avenue and Grove Street to the upgrades planned for March Avenue. These projects are going to make cycling safer and more accessible for everyone in our community. We would also like to extend our thanks to Larry Zimmer and the entire Public Works Department. Their openness and willingness to include Move Healdsburg in the conversations around planning these projects has been invaluable. The spirit of collaboration helps ensure that the needs and voices of cyclists are heard as we shape the future of transportation in our city. May 15th is Bike to Everywhere Day. Cities across Sonoma County will be celebrating by setting up Energizer stations where cyclists can stop for refreshments and pick up swag bags provided by the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. Here in Healdsburg, we hope to set up a station in the plaza, but I need approval by the city. I hope to see many of you out there and enjoying the day with us.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on now to city manager reports. City Manager Kay?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, a couple of introductions. We have a different crowd here in the staff corner this evening. First off, our city attorney is traveling this week, so I want to introduce and thank Mary Wagner from the city attorney's office, who is filling in and to my immediate right tonight. So rest assured, we're in good hands from a legal perspective this evening, should we need it. And also April Mitz, our new assistant city manager, who you've all met before, is last week and has very much hit the ground running. So I am very happy to be back to fully staffed in our office, and I'm looking forward to lots of great contributions there. So just first off, wanted to introduce a couple of new faces over here. Beyond that, I have a handful. We were talking before about events, and I have a handful. We have a busy calendar starting to ramp up in the weeks ahead. So a few dates that I wanted to highlight for you all. First off, next week on the 15th, as you're all aware, is a community meeting on the March Avenue project. We are cruising along on the design of that streetscape project, and this is a chance for the community to gather and get up to speed on that, provide feedback, and have questions answered. So that'll be at the Fitch Mountain campus of Healdsburg Elementary next Wednesday, I think is the 5th. So Thursday, thank you. The 15th. So one event to be excited about, another that following weekend on Sunday, the 18th, we'll be having a celebration to commemorate the naming of the community center in honor of Abel de Luna. Just true to form, as we talked before, what started, I think, as a quaint recognition of that naming is turning into what could be a significant party and fun gathering for the community on that Sunday. So we encourage everybody. I think there'll be live music. And an opportunity just to celebrate former Mayor De Luna and his family. I know that they are appreciative and excited to join us. So look forward to seeing everybody who's able to make it out there on Sunday, the 18th at the community center. Week after that, on the 27th, we will commemorate the long-awaited completion of our recycled water pipeline project. So we're planning to do that at Recreation Park, which is currently hooked up and receiving recycled water for irrigation, along with a number of other facilities. So that afternoon, we'll have a short ceremony and allow the council to, I don't know if it's a ribbon cutting exactly, but we'll find the right metaphor for celebrating the turning on of the recycled water out there. But another opportunity to just celebrate something that I know has been many years coming. And then the weekend after that, the beginning of June marks Pride Month. So as the council knows, we actually raised the pride flag at all of our city facilities, but we'll be doing that here at City Hall before the council meeting on Monday, June 2nd. So at 5 o'clock before the city council meeting, we'll have a ceremony to raise the flag and celebrate the kickoff of Pride Month. And in addition to flags at city facilities, as the council knows, we'll also be lighting the bridge in Pride rainbow colors for the month of June. So you can expect that to go on the 1st or the 2nd. And then two other quick updates that are not for the calendar. One is we talked a little bit about the Foley Pavilion. So we may have all seen it walking in today, but I watch it from my office. The roof started going on this morning. So we've had lots of milestones, but that's a neat one. That'll make it look even more like a building. And it was pretty impressive to watch those pieces go on quickly this morning. So I encourage people to have a look at that and appreciate the transformation we'll be seeing in that facility in the weeks to come. At this point, construction's going very well. Our one uncertainty is the delivery of electrical equipment, which is apparently backlogged and supply chain issues. So we're hopeful that will come quickly, but you can all think good thoughts on that. But the rest of the construction is actually going very well and moving along very much on schedule. So mostly good news. And then lastly, it is the time of year for business license renewals. So anybody with a business license in town, heads up that renewals are starting now. You'll recall that we transitioned a couple of years ago to online renewal, and that's been a improved, streamlined process. So hopefully that's pretty painless for everybody who needs a business license, but just a reminder that is now open, and it is time at the end of the fiscal year for renewal. Thank you.
Any questions for the city manager? I can tell you I do the online business license renewal for one of my clients, and it's really seamless and I like it. It works well. So thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to public comments on items on the consent calendar and non-agenda items. This time set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters of general interest, not on the agenda, but related to city council business. Pursuant to the Brown Act, however, the city council cannot consider any issues or take action on requests during this comment period. Do we have anyone who would like to make public comment? Not seeing anybody rush up to the podium. Okay, so we'll move on then to the consent calendar. If we could get a motion to approve.
Mayor, I want to recuse from item 6C because I live within that assessment district. But I would move to approve items 6A, B, D, E, F, G, and H.
A second.
We have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Hagley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harrod?
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell?
Yes. And a move to
I move we approve item 6C.
Second?
roll call, please.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harrod?
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell?
Yes. Okay. So public hearings, we have none. First time in a while. Old business, to reject bids for the test wells for the ASR potential projects WA 006, Acting Utility Director Patrick Fuse.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. The item before you is to reject the bids for the test wells for ASR potential, phase 1 of project WA 006. It's our ASR wells project. Next slide, please. The recommended action for council is to adopt a resolution rejecting all bids received for the test wells for ASR potential, phase 1 of project WA 006, and direct staff to seek funding sources to complete this project. Now I'll tell you how we came to this recommendation. And next slide, please. So we'll start out with a bit of background. The city derives its water from surface rights on the Russian River, 80% with the Red Star from the Russian River. And then on Dry Creek, we have 20% of our rights. That's the Blue Star. Additional water is purchased from Sonoma Water when the city's water rights aren't available. And those can come from any of our diversion points. Next slide, please. So as you well know, droughts can cause the city's surface water rights to be curtailed. During the 2013 through 2018 drought, all but our most senior right, which is at the Fitch or Badger Park, all those rights were curtailed. During the 2021 drought, all surface water rights were curtailed, including the purchased water from Sonoma Water. We ended up having to petition for sufficient water for public health and safety. Next slide, please. Well, in the aftermath of the 2021 drought, the city engaged a consultant to investigate if groundwater wells not communicating with surface water were feasible in the city. And that consultant was GEI Consultants. The consultant considered if aquifer storage and recovery, also known as ASR, for those wells was possible to make them more sustainable. We would store water when surface water is abundant, and then we would withdraw that stored surface water and groundwater when surface water was scarce. And there's an image of how that ASR format kind of works. Next slide, please. The consultant determined that ASR wells are feasible, and based on the data available, and this is reference data, it's not field data, they could produce approximately 100 gallons a minute each, 300 gallons a day. Combined, the ASR wells could provide up to about 15% of the city's water demands, about 9% during those peak demand periods, and maybe a little bit more than 15 during our low flow periods, but on average 15%. Next slide, please. In 2021, armed with the feasibility investigation, we applied for grants to pursue our ASR Wells project, including the FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC grant. It was a competitive nationwide grant, and the grant covered, the city project was selected for the BRIC grant. We got notice of our selection in August of 2022, and it was finally funded in July 1st of 2024. The grant covers about 70% of the costs of the initially estimated project, which is about 6.8 million or so. Next slide, please. The scope of the grant funding was for phase one, which consists of constructing exploratory wells, which define the aquifer performance, the character and quality of the water that we would encounter, and sets the stage for design. And it also included design of the production wells and above ground facilities. The construction of the production wells and the construction of the above ground facilities as well, that was phase two, and those were deferred fundings and tasks based on the successful or lack of success of the exploratory wells. And those above ground facilities, those include power and control and chemical dosing. Next slide, please. So with the grant awarded, staff engaged once more the design consultant, GEI Consultants, to complete the phase one design, which prepared plans and specs for bidding and construction of the exploratory wells. And the sites that we had identified were at West North Street. There's a 1 acre parcel there that the city owns. Over at Badger Park, a little bit south of the existing Fitch water treatment plant. And over at the community center near the intersection of Grove Street and Healdsburg Avenue. Next slide, please. So it's good so far, isn't it? So on March 6th, the test wells for the ASR potential in phase one, they were advertised for bidding. And on March 19th, we held a pre-construction meeting, or P-bid meeting, I'm sorry, with prospective bidders. And then on April 3rd, we opened up bids. We received 6 bids, and they ranged from $977,000 to $2 million. So quite a range. But the lowest responsive bid was received from Weeks Drilling and Pump Company of Sebastopol. And it was for the amount of $977,000, which, fortunately for us, it was the low bidder. But unfortunately, this is where things start going sideways a little bit. Next slide, please. So we opened bids on April 3rd. On April 4th, the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees FEMA, the administrator of the BRIC grant, sent a communication announcing that the BRIC grant program was canceled. Only already obligated funds would be continued. And phase one, already obligated. So far, that seems good. On April 15th, Cal OES, the grant administrator in California, restated the DHS message and added that no time extensions would be granted unless previously authorized by FEMA. Now, the time of performance for the grant ends on November 29th, 2025, with no expenses incurring after August 29th, 2025. And the lack of extensions was confirmed in a, they called it a not a workshop, office hours with Cal OES on May 1st, which was subsequent to preparing this presentation. And Cal OES reiterated that projects that involved construction such as ours would not be granted a time extension. Next slide, please. So phase two, which is not obligated funds, and it was for construction, was completely off the table. And it was anticipated that it would follow immediately on the heels of phase one. Staff reviewed the project schedule and the work required with the contractor and the designer. And in absence of a extension, the best we could accomplish with the time constraint would be one exploratory well and perhaps starting another one. So let's just call it one. Staff would be, or city would be responsible for 30% of the cost, which amounts to about $125,000 of the $326,000 estimated for constructing one of the 3 wells, the exploratory wells. Next slide, please. So to complete the exploratory wells, the city would potentially need to self-fund the remaining ones. It amounts to about $650,000 per well. And there's additional costs for laboratory analyses, support during the construction of the exploratory wells, and then design of the above ground facilities, because that phase one's scope includes everything up to the conclusion of design of the final product. So construction of the ASR wells facilities are estimated to cost another 6.6 to 7 million. So it's a big lift for the city to take on, and it's not budgeted. Next slide, please. So in absence of outside funding, pursuing the test wells for ASR potential to any degree would displace funding for other projects that are of great benefit to the city. ASR wells, that project, when completed, would help with about 15% of the city's water demand. However, other projects in the CIPQ to improve the booster pumps, the clear well, and the well field capacity at Dry Creek could offset most to all of the Russian River sourced water, or approximately 80% of the city available rights. and the capability of most of the city's water demands in a decent water year. Next slide, please. With diversions from the Potter Valley project to Lake Mendocino becoming less certain, the city's supply of Russian River water, which again accounts for about 80% of the city's water rights, is also less certain, even without a drought. Improvements to the Dry Creek well field and water treatment plant can offset Russian River supplies and would be postponed if the ASR Wells project were pursued without outside funding. And they'd have to be rearranged a little bit, even if we had the outside funding from the BRIC grant. Next slide, please. Abandoning the ASR Wells project until outside funding is identified, allows the Dry Creek project to move forward, possibly sooner, depending on water fund revenues. Abandoning the ASR Wells project until outside funding is, as identified, appears to be the conclusion that best serves the city's water reliability needs at this time. And that leads us to our recommended action. Next slide, please. To adopt this resolution to reject all bids for the test wells.
Thank you, Patrick. Does council have questions? Councilmember Edwards?
All the wells were planned to be 550 feet.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll open this up to public comment at this time. Does anybody want to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone come forward. We'll close the public comment and come back to council for recommendations, actions, comments.
I have a comment and I would support the recommendation. I think, first I want to, I appreciate the fact that here in Healdsburg, we do have backup options. It's just not one thing. And you talked about, all right, this isn't working, but we can bring this in. And I think in this case, the approach is don't kill it. We need to be ready to pounce when the funding's available. And we've been in this situation before with our purple pipe, where we've done all the work, we're ready, and then another opportunity came and we were able to update the plans and the work that we've done so far to be able to make that happen. And that's already going to have a big impact in the coming years. With 25 million gallons, I think, is where we're at right now, just on that. And that project is, ribbon cutting coming up, a couple weeks, I think. And so, what I've seen is that water, is important to the administration, and, the BRIC grant may have been canceled, but other opportunities may arise. So I think that what we need to do is stay tuned, stay calm, stay ready, and then just focus on the resiliency and cost efficiency and capturing the water during the summer. And I wouldn't be surprised if once this, things kind of go down the road a little bit, that this reappears in a different form. And so I'd like it's not a good thing to have to cancel something right now, but I think I'm happy to move forward with the staff's recommendation with the idea that, I just know that our staff is ready to pounce once things shift around, and if an opportunity shows up, and a way to frame this that, works within this, potential grant opportunities, I think we'll be in a good position to move forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards?
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I'm glad that when we were talking about water in the past, that we came up with more than just one plan, so that we were able to take it. We can move. Yes, this is a setback on where we wanted to go, but actually we can move over to where we were going to be going with another project that we've got, and then keep this project shovel ready. So thank you for your working, presenting us with options and actually having more than one option. We're not sitting here panicking. We're ahead of it. So that's a good thing. So thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I don't have too much to add to that. I just want to say thanks for all the work that got us to this point, and yeah, hopefully we can just shelve this project and return to it at the right time. It is quite disappointing. I remember when I was running to be elected to this position, water was the number one issue. What's the city doing about it? And it was great to have this answer to those folks, and it's good to know that we're doing a lot more too. It's really important. It's super critical, and it's important to everybody in the city to know that that we're being responsive to the threat of drought, which is very real. Not immediately, but we know it's coming again, and so thank you, and hopefully this is just a pause.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Living through the drought in 2021 was miserable, right? So the creativity that the department came up with and the city came up with to do the recycled water and the wells and the dry creek component were pretty innovative and bold. And I think that's sort of helping us now because we've got the option of the dry creek, and that was on the table anyway, right? So we were going to do both. So it is disappointing that we can't do both because I think especially with Potter Valley thing sort of hanging over our heads, we're gonna have some issues there obviously down the road. But yeah, I definitely agree with the staff's recommendations. I think it's prudent to just go on the path that we know we can complete. I assume we know we can complete, right? We've got funds set aside for that project. That don't depend on the federal government at this point, right? So, yeah, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to offer that we adopt a resolution rejecting all bids received for the test wells for ASR potential phase 1 of project WA-006 and direct staff to seek funding sources to complete this project.
Second that motion.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Hagley.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harrod.
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
Can I point out a quick silver lining on this?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Staff bandwidth, right? Since we just went through goals, maybe like a little, like one
More?
thing got moved off a little bit, no?
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And so next up, we have the Healdsburg Avenue Complete Streets Project update with Public Works Director Larry Zimmer to introduce the item and then turn it over to the consultants. Is that what I?
Yes, there'll be a little back and forth here.
Okay.
We'll go through the agenda. Good evening, everyone. Next slide, please. So we're here tonight to see this presentation, and it is a milestone and a checkpoint. We have completed or gone from the conceptual drawings, which council saw in the past, and our team has put together engineering plan based on those conceptual drawings. And so you're going to hear what we have, what the scope is, with some detail. This is a scope that we know we can build, and we have order of magnitude estimate to go along with that so that it fits within our budget. And then the ultimate action here today is support from council to move forward with the final design. And that's the milestone part. Next slide, please. So the outline for today, I'll go over the project purpose and background quickly. And Jaggi Bandal from BKF will be presenting the design progress, going over those details of converting those concept drawings into an actual engineering plan. And then the exciting part is the very progressive complete street components that are included in this project. There will be a little detour with our traffic engineer, Mike Aronson of Kittleson, sitting behind me, who will talk a little bit about the original evacuation concept and why that may not be as beneficial as we thought it might be early on. We'll talk about the construction estimate. Then we'll turn it over to Clay Thistle, the city's project manager, CIP manager, to go over funding and schedule and close it out. Also in the audience is Amir Abdullahi behind me, also from BKF, and Mike Alston from Kittleson, who are available for questions. Next slide, please. So why are we here? Why this project? It has, longer than I've been here, there have been complaints about the condition of the pavement on Healdsburg Avenue. We have 5 lanes of road. We do not need 5 lanes of road. And it is clearly built for vehicles, not for pedestrians, not for bikes. So we all recognize this, that we needed to do something. But what do we do? Next slide, please. So we engaged the public more extensively than I've ever done in my career. It was quite an undertaking, and I want to thank the prior council, including Councilmember Hagley, for pushing this, because it was a great experience and it led us to a really great project. The ultimate result of that process was the conceptual drawings that we had talked about. Next slide, please. So that concept plan came to council, and using that, we had a great success by the ATP $11.8 million on our second attempt, which is still one of my proudest moments in my career. Was not expected, but it led to this great project. Following that, we put out an RFP, and we hired a really excellent team that I've introduced already. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joggy.
All right, thank you, Larry. All right, so when our team got involved, our efforts really began with looking at the existing roadway corridor and trying to understand, the existing site constraints, deficiencies. And as Larry mentioned, it's a wide 5-lane outdated roadway with terrible pavement conditions along several segments of the corridor. As you can see, in some of the photos that are up there. In addition to that, this was really designed for vehicles, not people. There are very few, crossing distances for pedestrians throughout the corridor. There, are no existing bike lanes, along the entire corridor. And, there's no ADA compliant facilities, sidewalks are disjointed, and there's minimal shade cover, which isn't really inviting to bring people to the roadway and want to use it, as a mode of transportation. So knowing that, next slide, please. We tried to reimagine what, the corridor would look like, and took this through our design process, which really required us to get out there, do field surveys, understand, how to convert that concept into a real world engineered drawing. So we brought in the horizontal control, we did utility investigations, looking through all of the existing records to understand what facilities are out there and where. We also looked at the existing pavement conditions, understanding when the existing roadway was built and what remediation efforts would be required, as well as traffic operational needs, understanding what's required from an operational perspective, given that we're eliminating a lane in each direction and repurposing it to a new bikeway. And lastly, just right-of-way investigations, understanding where the public right-of-way starts and ends and what we're able to work with as part of this project. Next slide. So this is what we ended up with, and I'll kind of walk you through the entire corridor. Starting on the south at Powell Avenue, we're introducing a new protected intersection at this location. And, all throughout, you'll see a number of different colors. The green represents the proposed bikeways. The dash green represents all of those interaction zones with existing driveways, and the solid green identifies refuge areas, within the intersections and also at each of the bus stops. And then the blue hatching represents areas where we will be incorporating landscaping and improving aesthetics along the corridor. So like I mentioned at Powell, the goal is to introduce a protected intersection, which We'll include bulb outs at some of the corners in order to shorten up the crossing distances for pedestrians, but not prevent, turning maneuvers for vehicles, large trucks that navigate these roadways. So we looked at that extensively, and you'll see as I walk you through this, most of the major roadway intersections along the corridor include the protected intersections, similarly at Dry Creek and March Avenue on the bottom right. And then along the different segments in between each of those side streets, such as Ferrero, Monte Vista, will include similar bulb outs to shorten up crossing distances and minimize that interaction zone between pedestrians and vehicles within the roadway. Next slide. So just going to the north, you can see similar improvements are being proposed throughout. Additional crosswalks are being provided at Terrace, Sunnyvale Avenue, and Paul Wiki Drive. And another protected intersection will be installed at the entrance to the Healdsburg Library and Community Services driveway. Next slide. And, again, similar improvements at Grove Street. Grove Street's a focal point at this specific location, given Foss Creek is located just to the west. We incorporated designs to integrate that existing pathway to the new bike and ped facilities proposed on Healdsburg Avenue, just providing that connectivity. And then as we transition to the north, we're kind of conforming the design to existing conditions, as there are bike lanes located on the far north end near Pasalacqua. And then along different segments, you can see the blue hatched areas kind of increase, and there's planting proposed throughout. Next slide. So a lot of what I proposed and discussed is consistent with complete street elements. These are really geared to provide safe facilities for bicyclists, pedestrians within the existing roadway. So we're not just tailoring the roadway to vehicles. We're finding every opportunity to incorporate safety, improve user experience and comfort as bikes and pedestrians start integrating within the roadway. Next slide. So kind of walking you through the finer details. I know that those first three maps were kind of providing a big overview. I wanted to dive into some of the details of three general conditions you'll see throughout. I talked a lot about protected intersections, and the one being proposed at Dry Creek and March Avenue is up on the screen. You can see what we're proposing to do here is shorten up the crosswalk distances like I mentioned, but also create refuge areas for bicyclists at each corner of the intersection. We are also tightening up the right turning movements at each of these locations, which basically slow down vehicular speeds and also provide better visibility to cyclists as vehicles are turning. So these are known to lower crashes and collisions, and will be located throughout the project design. Next slide. Another representative complete street element is the proposed crosswalks at a lot of the side streets that I mentioned. As you heard, these are coming in everywhere, and what we're doing is not only providing these at logical locations between destination points on both sides of the roadways, we're also looking at how best to shorten up the distance and create refuge areas consistent with the design guidelines throughout the roadway. So pedestrians aren't crossing a large 3-lane roadway after the conversion occurs. There's going to be a refuge area within the median, and there will also be a flashing beacon in order to increase visibility for vehicles as they approach each of these locations and pedestrians are crossing. Next slide. And lastly, there are several existing bus stops that are located throughout the corridor. We have come up with unique designs at each one of these locations consistent with best practices in design guidelines, which basically we found a way to not create right-of-way impacts where these are located because the right-of-way is fixed at the back of walk, and we wanted to find a way for buses to pull out of the roadway like they do in existing conditions without impeding that through traffic and still provide that continuous bike lane that runs through this area. And the loading and loading area and refuge area for pedestrians wanting to load will be located in the sidewalk area on the back end. So all of these modes interacting in these areas, we were able to accommodate them without any right-of-way impacts.
And if I could just add there, a typical bus pullout, the buses cross a bike lane. So you have a bus-bike conflict. Here, it eliminates the bike-bus conflict. You do have a bike-pedestrian conflict, but clearly that is going to be safer and more easy to navigate.
All right, next slide. So, with all those complete street improvements in mind and what we were able to do, we can accomplish providing continuous protected bikeways throughout the corridor, which was what was committed to as part of the grant. However, through our design process, there were specific refinements we had to make in order for all of this to work. And I kind of wanted to cover 4 key refinements that we had to make from those initial concepts. So I'd like to walk you through those. They generally include the amount of tree planting that's proposed along the corridor, the type of Class 4 bike protection that's provided between that bikeway and the adjacent vehicular lane, as well as the width of the bike lane and the discussions about it being a dual purpose evacuation lane during an emergency scenario. And lastly, the proposed improvement at Sunnyville Drive. Next slide. All right, so our team looked very extensively at tree planting opportunities as part of our process. We tried to accommodate them wherever we could, but there are several locations where the proposed planting in the previous concept was done right above where existing utilities sit. So as part of our efforts through the design, we are able to relocate many utilities and accommodate those proposed locations for trees. However, it just became too restrictive to move major lines and also cost prohibitive to do it everywhere. So where we were able to kind of settle based on the proposed design was we can accommodate 70 total tree planting locations in those blue hatched areas that I had mentioned. And we kind of set the stage for future planting efforts, which could be just a little under 100 when the city has additional means to do so in the future. Next slide. Okay, so transitioning to the Class 4 bike lanes in all the areas where we could accommodate landscaping, we definitely did. And again, those were the blue areas that were shown. The utilities were mainly the restriction in those areas. However, where the design warranted the need for, some type of curb protection in the interaction zones between the bikeways, the adjacent driveways, or side streets, we incorporated curb medians just to, not compromise the safety component of everything. And, along those straight stretches of Healdsburg Avenue where there are fewer interaction zones, we incorporated K71 delineated posts due to the utility restrictions beneath. And lastly, as the bikeways transition into conforming to existing facilities on the north end of the corridor, we're providing buffered striped bike lanes to conform to existing conditions. Next slide. All right, and aside from the type of protection, we also looked very closely at the width of the bikeway up and down the corridor. We had to make revisions to the width along certain segments. And, as Larry mentioned, in early community engagement efforts, there were discussions about the bikeway being a dual purpose for an evacuation lane in an emergency scenario. However, as we dug deeper into this and we looked at design standards and what's required, there are basically 3 prohibitive conditions reflected at the protected intersections, refuge islands with the crosswalks, as well as the bus stop pullout locations. We simply cannot meet design standards without impacting, the right of way. There just isn't simply enough room to widen the cross section of the roadway, meet design standards, and provide that continuous, bikeway at each one of these locations. Aside from the horizontal geometric constraints, the city simply also just doesn't have staff to direct, evacuation traffic in and out of these areas. So we evaluated traffic operations just to ensure that we're not proposing any issues in a evacuation scenario by completing an analysis of, or simulation, I should say, of traffic operations pre and post project conditions in that event. And our traffic consultant, Kittleson, will walk you through some of the details associated with that.
And just a second before Mike starts, to explain a little bit about what Jaggi had just said, if there were to be an emergency, how do you get vehicles to all of a sudden transition from being in the vehicular lane into a bike lane? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be clear. And that's where we're saying we're not going to have safety staff or public works staff able to even to navigate people into it. And as he showed, we had all of these constraints. So then the next question became, do we really need this evacuation lane? This came up through the community meetings after we had our full evacuation. It was on everyone's mind. We were taking away 2 of the through lanes, and everyone said, wait a minute, what happens if? And our consultant at that time, different consultant team, had said, well, we can make it a 10-foot bike lane and you can just use that. But as they've demonstrated, that isn't reality. So then the next step was, if this is going to have a negative impact, maybe this isn't the project we do, which is where we brought in Kittleson, our traffic engineer, and now I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Mike Alston from Kittleson Associates. Our role in the project, as you probably surmised, has been to ask and answer questions for the design team of, does this work from a traffic perspective? So we first answered questions of, does this work on a daily basis from a traffic perspective, the lane configurations and what have you. And then this question about evacuation came up and said, okay, is the project that Jaggi has just described going to create an adverse impact for that irregular evacuation scenario? Fortunately, we've actually worked with university partners and done evacuation analysis for other cities, so we have some background on this question. So I'll walk you through 3 slides to show you how we asked and answered this question about what does this project mean for an evacuation scenario. So this first slide shows you the project limits, which you're familiar with already. And then we can actually just go ahead to the next slide, which will show I forgot we had animations. And then this shows the route from the project to 101, and that's via Dry Creek Road. So we'll come back to that in a moment. The idea is that we're really funneling traffic through that point in an evacuation scenario. So we wanted to say, let's take a reasonably worst case scenario. So we, Kittleson, made sure to work with city staff, work with police and fire to define that and make sure that they agreed what we were talking about as a reasonable scenario. So what we did is we drew a boundary roughly around the city borders plus Fitch Mountain and said, what we're thinking is a fire from the northeast creates an evacuation scenario for essentially this blue bordered area. Some of the research that we've done and we've referenced in other cases shows that everyone's either at home or at work. They're never at both places at the same time, but there are certain times throughout the day when there's sort of a maximum presence of people both at work who don't live in town and then also at home who do live in town. So we create that overlapping scenario. We use demographic data from the countywide travel demand model to say, okay, what we're talking about here is about 10,000 employees who are at work when an evacuation order goes in, about 5,500 households where people are at home, using 2 vehicles per household and trying to evacuate everyone from this blue area to Highway 101 to either go north or south, that results in about 14,000 vehicles, people in vehicles trying to get out in the case of evacuation, trying to get to 101. So again, trying to define a reasonably conservative analysis scenario to say, hey, worst case, what is the effect that this Healdsburg Avenue project would have on that evacuation? So the next slide will show a little bit of the results. Oh, and I guess I want to mention one other thing. I mentioned Dry Creek Road, which shows up very small there as a red arrow. Today, it reduces down to 1 lane headed to Highway 101. The city does have a project on the books that would change that Dry Creek Road to 2 lanes in the westbound direction headed to 101. And we went ahead and incorporated that to say, hey, let's make sure we're focusing on Healdsburg Ave in a better case scenario on Dry Creek, so we don't falsely accuse Dry Creek of being the problem if Healdsburg is in fact the problem in the project scenario. So what ends up happening here is from the north, you have people along Healdsburg Avenue traveling south trying to get there. From the south, you have them headed across the north, and then from the east, you have them headed north. So you have 3 directions converging trying to get to Highway 101. And when I show you the results, I'll show you why that's relevant. So the next slide will show you the results. I've already talked about that, so we can go next slide. Keep going there. And what we're going to show on this slide is travel times in an evacuation scenario, both without the project, i.e. no road diet project, no lane reduction, and then with the project. And we're talking about travel times to get from home or work to Highway 101. So folks are headed north or south, maybe they're headed to Santa Rosa, maybe they're headed all the way down to San Francisco, but we're talking about just getting to Highway 101. So if you hit the next slide, that'll show the results here. And if we look at the northbound, those top numbers are, again, crosstown travel times in that evacuation scenario without the project. Those bottom ones are with the project. So very specifically, the change that I'm describing is Healdsburg Avenue reducing from 5 to 3 lanes where I showed you previously. We did, again, working with the city and police and fire, say, okay, there's not actually going to be someone out there directing traffic. The signals will work how they do today, but people will use that center lane to queue. So in the today's scenario, out of 5 lanes, we'd have 3 people waiting. 2 through lanes plus the left turn lane. In the with project scenario, we just have 1 plus the left turn lane. So that's the difference. And as you can see in the results here, some travel times go up by some number of minutes. What I'm showing you is the average travel time. So there would be out of 1,000, a couple thousand people in a given geography, some would be lower, some would be higher. The distribution is not reflected there, but on average, there's actually a marginal effect. And that's heading to the northbound ramps. And if you go to hit next slide, we'll go to the southbound ramps. Very similar story here. Some closer to those ramps, show an average of less than a minute increase. Some show an average of up to a minute or up to 3 minutes increase. Now, these are all worse than getting around town without an evacuation, but really what we're focused on is today versus that lane reduction. So the good news for this project is it actually really doesn't affect the evacuation times to 101 that much. Now, why is that? Conceptually, I want you to think about Dry Creek, 1 lane or 2 lane, as being a sink drain, right? And what we're trying to do is drain the water out of the sink. That sink drain is unaffected by this project. What is affected is Healdsburg Avenue, which tells you the size of the sink. We can change the size of the sink, and that changes where the water is storing. That changes where drivers are waiting. But ultimately, we have those 3 directions of travel trying to get to Dry Creek, trying to get to 101. With that unaffected, what we see here as a result is pretty marginal travel times to get across town in that evacuation scenario. So again, ran through a lot of information there, but to summarize, relatively reasonable worst case scenario, evacuating the city plus Fitch Mountain, worked with the city, fire, and police to make sure we defined a reasonable scenario, used the travel demand model to ask the question about, okay, seriously, what's the effect for an average travel times to get to 101? And the effect is pretty marginal across the board there. Turn it back to Joggy to talk about the next topic.
All right. So as Mike and his team at Kittleson, also evaluated operations on the corridor itself, we looked at the Sunnyvale intersection closely. The 2020 concept originally proposed signalizing this intersection, But as we got through the operational analysis, we determined that a signal is not warranted based on existing and forecasted needs. Our proposal as part of this project is to essentially just create safer crossings for pedestrians and bring visibility with the flashing beacons, because that's really all that's warranted at this time. However, if a need presents itself in the future, the design is set up to accommodate future signalization in the future. All right, next slide. So lastly, the biggest consideration as part of all of this is also project cost. When the concept was originally developed and the city pursued and received the ATP grant, the budget that was identified in order to deliver these improvements was roughly on the order of $13 million. As we got into our design process, like I explained earlier, we evaluated all the existing conditions and constraints. And if we had implemented the full wish list that was identified and we moved each of the utility constraints that were mentioned, we went out and acquired all the property that would be needed, the project cost would have nearly doubled, was what we had determined. So in order to roll that back and stay within the project budget, these design refinements that were presented throughout the project were carefully integrated in order to kind of bring the overall design roughly back into the $13 million range. So we generally found that we can deliver all of the commitments within the grant and provide that continuous bikeway and increase safety with all of those complete street elements that were presented as part of the project.
So I just wanted to walk you through some of the funding and the budget. The Healdsburg Avenue Complete Streets project has a design budget of approximately $1.6 million. This is made up of $600,000 in OBAG federal funding, and then almost $900,000 of local Measure T to support the design. The construction budget's approximately $13.7 million. That large component that Larry touched on before of the 11.8 from the active transportation grant, and then 1.9 in local Measure T matching funds. So bringing the total project budget to $15.4 million. A point that I just wanted to touch on is also included with the construction budget is approximately $3.6 million for complete rehabilitation of the roadway pavement. So the finished surface will be new pavement. So depending on the existing pavement condition, certain sections will be completely reconstructed. So some of those broken up sections that need more attention, while other better suited can be ground out and repaved. Next slide, please. So the schedule, with council support tonight, we would begin the environmental clearance, right-of-way certification phase, and the final design phase, ultimately leading to receiving our federal approval to proceed with construction. Construction would be then anticipated to begin as soon as September 2026 and taken approximately 2 to 2.5 years. Next slide, please. So just again, the recommended action for this evening is to receive an update on the Healdsburg Avenue Complete Streets project and confirm council support to move forward with the environmental clearance and final design. We'd like to then open it up to questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that report. Appreciate it. A lot of good details. Does council have questions? Councilmember Higley.
I'm leaving all my comments and I'll just focus on the question.
That's good.
Can you go back to the evacuation slide? I guess, or you don't need to, but my question was, it looked like your analysis was done on the entire city evacuating through Dry Creek Road. I live up in Parkland Farm, so I don't think I would head south to Dry Creek. If I'm going to evacuate, I would go up north. And then same with, if you live on the south end of town, you try to like go out that way. Maybe our chiefs can talk to the Kincaid, how that worked, because I was down at the county when all of that was going on.
Sure. Yeah, quick clarification. I appreciate the question because I probably didn't describe it well enough. The blue box was us drawing a box large enough to capture anyone who might use Dry Creek. ultimately, when we use the travel demand model, those other exits were available to assign to. So like in the scenarios, not every single person in the blue box actually did use Dry Creek. What we wanted to make sure was we didn't exclude from our analysis anyone who could possibly use it. Does that clarification help?
Yeah, that makes sense, because I was wondering about that section. That makes sense, that people that live there have come into town.
Exactly.
And if I restate what Mike said earlier about a realistic worst case scenario, this is very conservative. The assumption of the number of vehicles that would be moving in the case of an evacuation is really high. We went very conservative with this, with these numbers.
So to follow up on, like with the fire, we had plenty of time, like notice. I think the announcement was at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we were expecting PG&E to shut things off at 2:30, and it extended till 5. So when you're thinking worst case scenario, it could be like an earthquake, or maybe you have some examples on how this would work on something that was more instantaneous.
Yeah, it could be really any natural disaster, right? We're looking at something that, in a worst case scenario, we want to make sure that we encompass every possibility, and that we're not giving you, information that paints it in a better picture than it is. So when we ask them, give us the worst case, everyone, let's try and funnel as many people through, one choke point as possible. What does it look like? As someone who's going to have to make a decision on evacuations, this is good information for us when we know what the amount of time we're looking at is. And as Chief Boaz and I are going to have those conversations in the future, if we ever have to, and we know that, the travel times and amount of time for people to evacuate is around a half hour at the top end on a worst case scenario, that helps inform that decision of how much leeway do we need to go. I think as we've progressed in emergency management, we're always going to be erring more on the side of caution, and making those decisions earlier rather than last minute. But just like with Tubbs back in 2017, when fires start to happen, they can be quick moving, and there might be that worst case that happens and the orders go out that people need to go. And having this information is helpful for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Edwards, and then Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so this would be followed up. I know we have evacuation zones. Would this be followed up with evacuation routes so that we could say this zone is evacuating on this route? Or will it just be up to the citizens to figure out which their best way to leave?
Yes. And that's kind of my attorney answer of it depends.
Okay.
Because every emergency is different.
Mm-hmm.
And evacuation routes, we want to be careful that we're not saying this is the only direction you should be evacuating when if your evacuation zone is part of an evacuation. It's really options based. You got to know where the emergency is originating from and what your best course of action is to get out. If there's an earthquake and there's an evacuation because now there's fires and 101 bridge over Russian River has collapsed, so going south is not the option. You want to go north. So those are where it's hard to do that. There could be, general guidance. If you're in Parkland Farms, as Councilmember Hagley was saying, going towards Alexander Valley and Lytton Springs on ramp and off ramp is probably your preferred option. But again, it depends.
Okay. And if I could add, this project is not going to develop an evacuation plan for the city. What we were looking at is, would this project negatively impact evacuation if we needed one? And it is very small impact. It is not a reason not to do the project at all. And so we felt very satisfied with the results.
Okay, and then.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And then if I'm reading between the lines, that we won't be doing the undergrounding that we talked about. on this, with this project?
The undergrounding project was just a small portion at the north end, and it has not been determined yet, looking at Patrick, who's not here right now. It has not been determined yet whether or not that will or will not be included. Depending on the funding for the underground at Grove Street and with Terry's departure, there is a chance that that small portion on the north end that was intended to be underground on this project will not happen. So we are designing with the assumption that it won't, but still planning and hoping that it does.
So planning and hoping that it does, I heard that the trees and the utilities kind of come together. Will planting these trees forbid future undergrounding? I mean, I hate to see this nice new paved street and tear it up again.
We will certainly not do that. That is part of the design process.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Just back to the evacuation times again. So just to understand it more clearly, really the only thing that would meaningfully decrease those evacuation times would be to somehow increase the access to 101 or even the width of 101, which, you know, is not a reality, but I just to get a better understanding what really happens in a scenario like this. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, from the traffic, so not from the management perspective, but from the pure traffic operations perspective, that sink drain analogy is helpful to say. Once we looked at that intersection of Dry Creek and Healdsburg, it's the piece between there and 101 and including 101 that you can only fit so much through a fixed point. And we're talking 1 lane or 2 lanes, you really can't fit more through that. So you can get people to that point as quickly as you want, but you just can't get more than a certain amount through 2 lanes.
Of course, that's true on every on-ramp, right? Not
Exactly. Yep.
About the reduction of trees, I assume that if we were to, you know, have a larger budget and have more money, there would be ways to move the utilities to accommodate more trees. That's, I don't expect, I think your explanation is good and I'm fine with that, but just to understand it a little better, is that true? I mean, basically we're hitting a wall based on the amount of expense it would take to redesign the utility component to accommodate the original number of trees. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's a yes and no to that. I think there is also a cost factor that we probably could add more trees, but we are needing to stay within our budget. The concept drawings had just a row of green everywhere. And there are utilities that would need to be moved that we're not going to move from a cost factor. So we are putting in 70 new trees on this stretch of road. That is a large number of trees to be adding into a project, which is a wonderful thing. And as Jaggi had said earlier, there is a potential to add some more. And those are the ones that are not being included because of the cost. And the cost isn't planting a tree, of course. It is the landscape median, it's the irrigation to it, and not to mention all of the future expenses of maintaining that. So I don't recommend going with more now. If for some reason things change and we find ourselves with excess money, that is a possibility that we could do it part of this project. Otherwise, this would be a future project that we would probably not get to because we have many other priorities, is the reality.
It says 70 proposed trees, but is that tree locations or actual trees? Because there's both languages used here, but.
Yeah, actual trees.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a rough number. You got a landscape area, how many trees are going to fit? 70 plus or minus is how I would read that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Higley, another question?
All right, so stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. So we have this project, you said is a two and a half year project, right? We're redoing the Grove Street intersection, and Grove Street work is going to be, we're improving Grove Street. And then in our 5-year capital improvement budget, we have the roundabouts at Dry Creek Road. Yes. And we have Dry Creek Commons that is going to be kicking in. Can you kind of walk through the timing so that for the residents, what are we looking at for a construction zone? Because the roundabout, you know, it was painful when that was going on. There was a lot that impacted a lot of people. And now we're well removed from that construction period and it's working great. So I just want to kind of set the stage of all these different projects because it seems like within a 5-year period.
Sure. So, I mean, ultimately, our goal or how we would, look to manage those projects would be that we wouldn't have the Healdsburg Avenue corridor between, Grant and Dry Creek going simultaneously as Grove. Those are both two north-south, so that we would either, if they were coming forward and seemed like they were going to hit at the same time, we could manage them to adjust that. If they did end up in construction of the same, we could have restrictions within the contract that created working windows for different segments. The Healdsburg Avenue project, is quite vast and provides a lot of opportunity to work in other areas further to the north to kind of relieve the construction congestion as if they did coincide with work going on.
And real quick, just on Healdsburg Avenue, then I'm assuming it's like when they do freeways, they're doing one side then the other. It's not shut the whole section down.
No, it wouldn't be anticipated that there would be closures on Healdsburg Avenue. If so, they'd be probably pretty short duration, or potentially depending if it, sometimes signal work can be done at night.
And then can you talk about the timing of how the roundabout, the Dry Creek Commons and that construction fits in with all this?
With regard to the roundabouts, at Highway 101, the current planning scheduling would be that those wouldn't commence, until those projects were complete, the Grove Street and Healdsburg Avenue.
And I could just add for Dry Creek Commons, which is the housing project behind Big John's, they need to break ground this year. So hopefully that's happening this summer. My recollection is 12 to 18 months, probably 18 for construction. So compared to I think that's it's an important project, but modest construction impact contained mostly on site. So I wouldn't be too worried about traffic impacts. But also hopefully the bulk of that work is done before this one starts.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So if there are no further questions from council, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. Anybody like to speak on this topic? Welcome.
There we go. This is all very exciting. And I have just a couple of comments of things that I noticed. One of the things that I see in lots of different jurisdictions is people's concerns about things like evacuation and other emergency access, just stopping things cold when somebody brings it up. So and nobody wants those kind of problems. I worked the Tubbs fire. I saw gruesome things. I don't want any more of that. But I'm very pleased that this very conservative and, scientific approach to figuring out, is this going to make a significant difference, was conducted as part of the project. It just sounds fabulous. One of the other pieces that I was particularly pleased to see, as someone who has interactions with buses very frequently on my daily commute and have come very close to being hit by buses, that separating the bus bike thing. I'm not sure I could really see exactly how it's going to work, but not having the two cross is a really fabulous thing. So good job, everybody.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Richard Berg, Healdsburg. Just a few comments and questions. With the bus shelters and the bike lane going across the pedestrian access to the bus, I'm curious if that includes the consideration of benches and shade cover, and how that would interact with the cyclists there. Just a concern. I didn't see bike boxes at the Dry Creek intersection. I saw an unusual, and I assume the green we saw is what the bicycle lane would follow, and there's no bike box there. So it suggests following the pedestrian path across Dry Creek. And other intersections for cyclists often have a bike box in front of the lane so a cyclist can cross rather than move to the right. I'm just curious about how that actually would be built out. Councilman Edwards' question about the evacuation areas, it does seem like it would be possible to use cascading evacuation notices under some circumstances, and it might require looking at the boundaries of the evacuation areas for that particular purpose of cascading people out. The furthest, it's not clear to me whether you'd let the nearest go first or the furthest go first, but you would think about it if you were going to try something like that. And yeah, I just hope we end up with a lot of green paint as a cyclist who rides a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Mark McMullen from Parkland Farms. One of the things about this is a beautiful, beautiful project. This will be a signature project for Healdsburg and create a template for what we can do with other projects throughout town. And looking at the landscaping and the bulb outs and the curb extensions and the crosswalks, I haven't heard anything about incorporating any art into this. And I think that that's a very important component because this is such a signature project for Healdsburg. So I really hope that as they move forward in the design phase, that they will be talking to the Arts and Culture Commission about how we are going to incorporate art into the benches that hopefully we're going to have. And I hope we have a lot of benches along that stretch because I've walked it and there are no benches there. And I really hope that we can get the Healdsburg aesthetic in this area. It's very important to get the arts involved in this because we are going to see this, we're going to interact with it, we're going to be walking up and down that street, we're going to be biking up and down that street, and we want to make it wonderful. So I understand the landscape design is there, I understand all these things, but I hope that we get, again, the Healdsburg aesthetic, talk to the Arts and Culture Commission, and really look at, what are the trash cans going to be like? What are the benches going to be like? Where are the benches going to be? How many are there going to be? I realize that we have no budget for art, but I hope that we can find some money or at least set aside the places that we can incorporate art when we can find the money to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, I'll bring it back. And maybe, Larry, can you answer the questions that Richard had? Benches, shade cover, and then bike boxes.
Well, I'm going to need a little help, actually. So as far as the bike boxes, I will start by saying cyclists always have the right to use the lane if they want to stay within the vehicular lane. They do not need to cross on the green paths. The other thing I will add is on the plans, the preliminary plan sheets that Joggy had walked through, all of the green crosshatching is not just a symbol to show you where the bike lane is. That is the proposed crosshatching that you would see as paint on the ground. So there is a lot of green there.
Yeah, just to add to that, like Larry mentioned, there's not just markings in the interaction zones. That's like where you see the traditional dashed green striping in those areas to increase visibility to bicyclists. But at each of the protected intersections, we'll have solid hatching in all of the areas where bicyclists can wait in the corners of the intersection where vehicles are turning. So there's a lot of green, like Larry mentioned, and the other thing I was going to say is those corners are going to be protected with curbs. So it's not like a two-stage left turn box that's usually in the middle of the intersection. It's an actual refuge protected by curb medians. Regarding the question about bus shelters, we are including shelters at nearly each of the proposed bus stop locations. There are a couple locations where there are right-of-way constraints that prevent us from putting in a shelter, but Those are limited to 2 locations.
And to answer Mr. Berg's question, the benches and the shelters will not conflict with the bike lane.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it back to council for comments. Any questions? Nope. Okay. You have comments. So let's. It's okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say. I really appreciate the fact that we, somebody had the awareness to notice that there's going to be a problem with that evacuation scenario that was originally sketched out. It looks like there could have been a lot of chaos that would have resulted if we'd gone that path. So thank you, and it's good to notice things better now than too late. And so I really appreciate the insight there, and also appreciate the presentation was excellent. It was very complete. It was great to get an overview on this. Once again, as we get closer and closer, we'll want to know more and more about those little details. We want to know about benches. I think that was a good question, and I'm sure we can get into that later on. But I do appreciate the contribution about artwork. At some point, I'm not sure when that is. There may be an opportunity for commission input on the finer points of design and landscape and so on. So just to keep that open, I think that was a good suggestion. But otherwise, I certainly support the project moving forward with this, with these new changes.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards?
No, I think it's, as Vice Mayor Harrod said, it was a good catch on that, the evacuation plan, because I think that nothing worse would have happened if we would have gone that route and find it didn't work after the construction. We'd spent the money, and this actually keeps us in budget and allows us to do some more flexibility. So the advantage of doing a study, and then this kind of reminds me of like when we were doing the capacity study. That is to get an idea what something looks like. It's not saying the original plan wasn't we were going to go with it, but it was a plan, a design, and we were able to look at that and evaluate that. So that's why it's very important to do these types of things. So appreciate the attention to detail.
Councilmember Haley.
So a couple things. First, I'm really excited about this project. I was sitting over here watching Eris, and I know that she was really excited. And everybody else from the complaints about Healdsburg Avenue. The pedestrian crossings, I really liked how those are set up. I think that really makes it more accessible and more comfortable to be able to cross the street. I know when I'm driving down from Parkland Farms, and there really is no street crossing from the community center all the way down to March Avenue. So it definitely will help, people feel more comfortable walking back and forth. The protected bike lanes, I'm not a fan of the green bollard things. When we first had the initial design and it was landscape protected, the cars can drive in it. I was really excited about that. However, I really appreciate the detail and the creativity that you used and also helping us understand why that doesn't work, and what, in those general meetings and the conceptual plans that we were looking at, it sounds great. Everybody's driving, evacuation, we're all going one direction. But when you have protected bike lanes and you're trying to, you pointed out, if a car is trying to then merge into the other lane, now it just has the potential to be a mess. So I'm comfortable with the changes there. Let's see, the bus stations, I agree. I think that's a great design, how you protected the bikes kind of going around. I think the initial thought is, well, that the pedestrians are walking in the path of the bikes, but at the same time, look.
Just to clarify, the only conflict there is the pedestrian going to the bus.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the pedestrian walking along the walking path or the bike walking along the bike, driving on the bike lane. It's only the people going to the bus that would conflict.
And I would hope,
which is a really minor conflict.
And I would hope that our cyclists are smart enough to see a bus stopped and people crossing to slow down. But so I appreciate that creativity in how you protected the bike lanes. We talked about the evacuation. One thing that I remember from Kincaid, because I got back up here later in the afternoon after being at the county, was the community center was an evacuation point for people that didn't have vehicles. And that was a lot of people that had been evacuated there. So that was another, kind of toward the end of the day, people were still streaming in that needed a ride out and the buses were coming in. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then finally, I really appreciate the thoughtful analysis and not installing a light at Sunnyvale. I think it's real easy just, oh, we need a light here, we need a light there, but it's not always the right answer. And so I think looking at this overall, when I look at some of like Powell Avenue and some of those sections where you can see it just makes it more comfortable. It's not this 100-yard dash to try to cross Healdsburg Avenue. It's kind of little segments because it's feels a little bit more condensed, which I think is good. So I'm excited about this project. I think it's going to be great for Healdsburg. And when all this started, my daughter was 5 years old, and I was looking forward to riding the bike lanes with my little girl, the protected bike lanes, and now I'll be riding in the car as she's driving down the street. But I'm excited about this, and and this is one piece of the overall transportation improvements that we're doing. We kind of talked about the other ones, Dry Creek Road and Grove Street. So we're really heading in the right direction. So thank you.
There's not a whole lot to add to that other than I agree with my fellow council members, and I'm really excited about the project and appreciate the changes and the need for them. I mean, when you're having groups and saying you start out with we want everything, right? And there's a point at which then you say, well, yes, but, and one of the restraints, of course, is money. It always is, right? So that I appreciate bringing the budget back down to where we can afford it. I think that's really critical so that this can actually get done. It's going to be transformational for the city of Healdsburg. I think what it's also going to do is it's going to bring the North Enzo Village, Montage area, Parkland Farms. It's going to make us all one community because it's going to be easy to get to. It's going to be nice. People are going to want to go there. So yeah, I totally support the project. Look forward to the next phases and thank everyone for all their hard work on this one.
Great. On behalf of the team, we thank you too.
Thank you. Okay. Is that it? Oh, no. So thanks, everyone. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. So now moving on to new business, we have to discuss the three City of Healdsburg topics for discussion at the Mayors and Council Members Association Board special meeting coming up on the 22nd of May. City Manager Kay.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll provide, just as everybody streams out for this item, a very brief presentation. It's a little bit of a different item and different topic than we've taken on before, but I'll try to provide some context. And I know Mayor Mitchell's been part of the board of directors of the Mayors and Council Members Association, so I'm sure she'll have some context and can help me frame this as well. Next slide, please. So high level, the recommended action here is to respond to a request from the Mayors and Council Members Association. They've asked that each city and each city council discuss three priorities that are important issues to our community for the purposes of conveying those shared priorities back to the county and the Board of Supervisors. So that is our challenge right now. And this would be direction that Mayor Mitchell would provide at that Board of Directors meeting on May 22nd later this month. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of context, the council knows this, but if members of the community are paying attention and may not be familiar, we are a member of the Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association. That is a consortium of all of the elected officials and all of the cities in Sonoma County, which meet regularly to discuss issues of regional significance and how the cities can work together to address those issues. And the mayors of each city form the board of directors of that association. And so again, this is a request of the board of directors for each of the cities. Next slide, please. So you can see that request came in at the April 10th meeting from the board. And again, the goal here is to provide priorities that would be not simply to identify our top 3 priorities, which I think we could spend all night here talking about our various priorities, but really those that are significant for a communication back to the Board of Supervisors so that their attention to those issues can be beneficial to us. Next slide, please. So we have put forth 4 items for City Council consideration this evening. Obviously, there are countless priorities for the city of Healdsburg that you might want to put forward. I don't doubt that there could be some really important ones that we as staff didn't think of and you all may want to discuss tonight. This list is informed based on staff's understanding of some of the critical issues that we are dealing with that have a regional context and more specifically have a funding relationship with the Board of Supervisors and require partnership on a countywide level. I'll also share that I've been in touch with the other city managers in the county and tried to identify some points of agreement. I don't think this exercise, if all 9 cities picked 3 unique priorities and brought back a list of 9 times 3 is 27 different priorities in a communication to the Board of Supervisors. I'm not sure what that accomplishes. My sense is some agreement and some alignment amongst the cities will send a more powerful message to the board that these are things that are really important to us that we would welcome your partnership on. So with that in mind, one that has come up a lot is mental health services, and specifically the county's Measure O, which was passed, I think now 4 years ago, is a dedicated sales tax for enhancing mental health response services. It was forecast initially to raise about $25 million a year. In the last fiscal year, it was up over 32. So it is a significant funding source. I don't doubt that there are regional mental health services that benefit all of the county, including Healdsburg. But I'll also note, as I think the council knows, that we have taken upon ourselves to form a mental health response unit in our police department, bringing on a full-time licensed therapist, developing a program by which we can provide a response to mental health crises and certain types of calls that don't require an armed police officer. We've talked about that in other meetings. I'm very proud of what our police department has put together. I believe it to be very, very effective, but we fund that 100% on our own with our general fund. We have had conversations. The board actually took an action a year ago that started the process of giving us some funding to expand our staffing and move that program to 7 days a week. Ultimately, in long and a pretty prolonged process of back and forth, it was determined that the county funding was contingent upon meeting a Medi-Cal reimbursement model, which has lots of paperwork and certain conditions for how calls are handled and also requires a response by at least 2 individuals to every call. So where we had hoped to expand to 7 days a week and spread out enhanced staffing, it would require an operational model that simply put, we didn't think would make us more effective. So what we would love to see, and I know that other cities would like as well, is to see a revisitation of how county funding for mental health services might be used differently to help benefit a city like Healdsburg. That might be our selfish goal, but I think we've developed a really good model that works for our needs. And if there were to be some assistance, that would be a great thing. Return to source isn't always a thing in sales tax measures, but I think we generate between $1 and $2 million a year in sales tax activity here in Healdsburg that goes into that 30-some million of Measure O. So I think if cities can work together and advocate for something that better supports our local programs, that would be a good thing. So that's number 1. Number 2 probably doesn't need as much explanation. We operate the L&M Village, which is a very successful interim housing solution for people who had experienced homelessness. The county, when we took that on, had committed to helping us with the operational costs. To date, they have. And that's a commitment of a little bit over, I think, $800,000 a year. So that is a wonderful thing, and we are grateful. But we do pursue funding from the county on a year-to-year basis. And for instance, we're having conversations, but we do not have funding from them for operation of the L&M starting with the July 1 fiscal year. So I'm hopeful we'll get there. I'm not ringing that alarm bell, but it would be phenomenal for us if we could get a multi-year contract with some security. Otherwise, it's becoming increasingly challenged to budget our Measure S fund, which is not intended to be specifically homeless service funding, but affordable housing funding. And if the year ever comes when we would need to pick up the L&M entirely on our own, it would really devastate our ability to do other projects. So that hasn't happened yet, but I'd love to have that assurance. And again, I know this is something that's on the mind of many cities too. As budgets get trickier and trickier for all municipalities right now, cities are also wrestling with the fact that they've taken on more and more funding commitments for dealing with homelessness. And the county does have dedicated funding sources available that we don't. The state HEAP funding, for instance, runs through the county, and a small share of Measure O is also committed for homeless response. And some of that coming back to the cities to support these projects would be really big for us. The last two are broader than the first two and probably a little bit obvious, but I thought worth calling out for your consideration. We just talked about evacuations as one example. You all know that when it's time to respond to a major natural disaster or emergency, city boundaries only count for so much, and coordination is really important. I know that a lot was learned during the evacuations that we just talked about and some of the other fires in the county. So I know we've all gotten better at working together, but it's one where there's always room for improvement and more coordination. And then lastly, water security, and we talked about that tonight also. It's a little bit more difficult in that how different cities are faced with the challenges of water security, and specifically how different cities in the county are impacted by the Potter Valley project and the changing diversions in the Russian River. Sometimes coordination makes sense and sometimes it's a little more difficult, but there is a lot of opportunity for coordination, and it's certainly just a priority, obviously, that's very much on our minds in Healdsburg that I think could have value in communicating back to the county. So I'm sure we could come up with dozens of options. You all might come up with several that resonate more for you than these, but these are four that we wanted to put forward for your consideration. Next slide, please. So I'll just close with the recommendation then. The Board of Directors will be meeting on May 22nd, and the request is that each city council discuss priorities to bring back. The ask was for 3. I don't know if there's any magic in that number. And I do understand that each city council or town council in the county will be having similar conversations. A couple of those have already happened. So this is a process all the cities will go through. And I know that your input and direction to Mayor Mitchell will be helpful in coming back. I'll close, and I'm sure Mayor Mitchell might have some additional context to add to this, but I'll just request in terms of the recommendation that once the council has deliberation, if by motion you could provide that direction and enumerate some priorities, I think that would be the best approach. Thank you.
Yeah, just for the context that I have, at the beginning of this year, Gerard Giudice, who's the chair of the board of directors this year, wanted to make sure that we had some impact, wanted to focus us all on our issues as a group. And so out of that conversation, it's like, well, how do we do that, right? So, because I think a lot of times we just meet and have dinner and go home. So that he wanted to make sure we had some impact. And then as the cities, especially Santa Rosa, was facing some pretty significant budget cuts issues, the issue about the fact that the cities, they in particular and us and Rohnert Park, all pay for a lot of the homeless services that are given and the mental health. Those are really the two key things that, the cities, as they're looking at budget cuts, are thinking, we can't do that anymore. We can't fund that anymore. And I think that is a real concern because cities don't want to cut that funding out either. But if you're facing a huge deficit, that may be it. So this was a way to talk about issues that all of our cities face, because I think we all address the homeless issue. We all address the mental health issue within our city limits. So that's kind of how this has come out. And I think so whatever the ideas are, I think just think about how can we get the county to help us with this. I think that's really, because this is the message from the cities to the county, right? So as a group. So I'll open it up. Comments, questions? No?
On the mental health thing, way I understand what you said is that the Measure O funding is pretty specific in terms of what can actually come into Healdsburg, and in terms of staff support and so on, we don't really need that right now. So it sounds like you're de-emphasizing this particular number, and but I'm not clear about what the other kind of possibilities are and when we could be asking for those, because every city has a need to expand mental health service and help in different ways. And, I don't think we're closing the door here, but I'm just wondering what those alternatives look like.
So what we had originally proposed to the county, they actually, with a different administration in their health department, year and a half ago, almost, had requested that we make a funding request of Measure O. What we had proposed is to hire a second clinician or licensed therapist. There's some flexibility into how we would structure that, so that we would have 2 full-time positions responding on city staff. We'd have 7-day-a-week coverage, which with a few days a week of overlap, so that they could coordinate and compare notes and work together as appropriate. That ultimately didn't work in large part because if they're going to provide any funding, they want us to follow a Medi-Cal model, which is very prescriptive and requires 2 respondents to every call, and a number of procedural changes to how we do business, which ultimately we determined would not make us more effective and may make us less effective. So I think our ask would be, if I could simply kind of throw a wish list to the county funding, would be to have less restrictive funding so that we could add another full-time position and the associated costs, which are pretty minimal, but a vehicle and support services for that position, and the freedom to schedule and staff it consistent with the model that we have that we think works, rather than doubling up resources for every call when we don't think that's necessary.
So that's the only thing that's on the table right now is to double up under these conditions, right? Okay, and so do you think the chances of us getting a second position in a way that works for us is a possibility, or do you think the door is closed, or is it fairly wide open if we can present it right, or?
Certainly not. Looking at Chief Jenkins, who may want to jump in on this, I certainly wouldn't say fairly wide open. We've sort of hit the end of the road with current conversations in the context of what the mayors and council members might bring forward. I think could be, obviously some of what we're sharing is Healdsburg specific, but might just be a unified voice that we're all paying into Measure O. And for those of us who have localized programs, some more flexibility to support them would be helpful. But I'll let Chief, he's been engaged in those conversations directly and can help.
Yeah, I think you summarized that really well. I think where we're at right now with the county is the model that they're looking to pursue, as City Manager Kay said, follows the Medi-Cal model that requires 2 people to respond to any call for service and then back billing for that. There is no long-term interest to fund out of Measure O, or at least providing that money locally here in Healdsburg.
So if we did determine that we were just going to stay with the staffing scenario we have now, and that there were no other alternatives, and it just didn't pan out for us, are we still going to go after Measure O funds for other sorts of mental health programs, education? I don't know what, I mean, it's sort of an open, suggestion here, but I wonder if at some point we need to like determine what would be good for a city besides the staffing.
Well, as I understand it, there's not an open pool of Measure Row funds to go after. It's not like a pool of grant funding that we can apply for. It's really programmed by the county. I do want to be clear that they do lots of things with Measure Row that are different from our program. There are times when I think they're pretty limited, but there have been times where outside of the hours that we have, there's a need to take advantage of that. But Chief might have numbers off the top of his head. My understanding is they're pretty few and far between.
Yeah, so their goal is to have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week mental health support teams available to respond to crisis emergencies. Their ability to staff throughout the county is often limited, and if we're calling for resources up here, they might be coming from Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, South County areas. So our ask really to the county was to increase that staffing level here, so that way we could staff and have staff on staff and within the city to be able to respond timely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Edwards, no. So it requires, is it Medi-Cal reimbursement that you were saying? And that the paperwork is just too onerous, or what? How does that work?
So what it really comes down to is part of the Medi-Cal requirement requires a co-response from a clinician, and there's about 20 other professions that can fall into the Medi-Cal requirement. Police officer is not one of those. So how we have ours modeled as a co-response between the clinician and a police officer doesn't meet that model. So what they would really be looking at, and what their ask was, is to hire a secondary staff member. They would give us the Measure O money to support that, but their hours would mirror that of our current clinician. So we wouldn't be adding any staffing capacity here. And then on the backside of it, they would then continue to support outside that 40 hours a week. So exactly what they're doing today without hiring another person to the staffing. So what we would essentially be doing is sending 2 people to every call. That way there could be a back end billing to Medi-Cal and the chance that the county could recover money from the state as part of that billing. There's a bureaucratic process behind that, including about a 6 or 7 page report that would have to be filled out with every contact.
So essentially, it's not worth it.
No.
Okay. Bottom line, right? Okay, thank you. If we don't have any other questions, we'll open it up to public comment. Not seeing anybody come forward, we'll come back. You guys have any recommendations that you'll allow me to bring to the meeting on the 22nd?
I would recommend you bring item 1 and 2 on here, and then the others as alternates. But I think we narrow the focus a bit.
1 and 2 being the mental health and
Health and
homeless?
Homeless.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the backup, we still run our program the way we run it with the backup help from the county, and then the homeless focus on that. I think that those are 2 good, solid recommendations that I think that we can all get behind.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
I'd agree with that.
Okay, so I believe you said you would like us to put this in a form of a motion. So could somebody do that for us?
I want to we provide direction to Mayor Mitchell regarding the City of Healdsburg priorities of mental health services and funding homeless. Item 2, to bring to the Mayor Council Associates Board meeting on May 22nd, 2025.
Second.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Hagley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harrod?
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell?
Yes. Thank you. That was good. And if they require 3, we'll just have the 3rd one on that list be our 3rd one, right? Okay, so now we're on to council reports on matters of interest occurring since the previous regular meeting. Who would like to start on this one? Councilmember Hagley.
Sure. I traveled to Washington, D.C. with NCPA for our annual federal policy conference. We had a number of issues that we were focused on in the context of everything that's going on. It was a very valuable meeting. We spent a lot of time with elected officials on both sides of the aisle, and really were there to advocate for our issues. And the messaging that we heard was over and over was, local officials and elected boards are golden in this town. It means a lot that we travel and go meet with people in person, our elected officials in person, because when we're sitting there, when I'm in an office, the residents of City of Healdsburg are in that office because I'm advocating for the residents versus some slick lobbyist that's, advocating for whatever they're paid for. And so it was interesting to navigate through the different sides, and especially projects like our hydrogen project where, you hear about, okay, California, the blue states their funding it's going to get cut, but maybe not. And, just having those conversations on why it's important and putting it in the terms of, that would matter or have interest to the administration that's in power. And I think that's something that, this is my second go around with the Trump administration. So it was a very productive trip, and just keep going. It's only been 100 days, so I think a lot will kind of shake out and see where things are.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, you seem hopeful. Is that from being there and talking to the people?
Yeah, I think we had a guest speaker that gave a good example. He said he was Paul Ryan had told him during the first Trump administration, is like, well, here's what it's kind of like. You have a laser pointer, you play with your cat, you put the little dot on the ground. As well, this is Paul Ryan saying this, what Trump will do is zoom it all over, and then everybody's chasing the dot, and he just goes right through. And so the message to us as advocates for public power was stay on message, just keep moving forward and advocate for your issue. And I think no matter which side is in power, I think it's important to really understand what the value is of what we're providing, whether it's the reliable energy, the data centers have to stay on, the lights need to stay on, like what we provide is important. The water, we talked earlier about the ASR wells, and I'm hopeful that in some other form, something will come back. So I am, I think with anything, you have to look at the opportunities based on the cards that are dealt. And that's just, that's kind of the approach that I take. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Councilmember Edwards?
Yeah, I was able to attend the Jane open house this weekend. A very nice, very well put together storefront. I think it really reflected what we were looking for. We've got both of our operators up. It was well attended, quite a crowd, and so that's what I went by there this weekend.
Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to say, following Councilmember Higley's comment, is that gratefully, utilities is sort of a unifying issue. It's usually not nearly as contentious as many of the other issues out there. So I think there's good reason for you to be hopeful, and I appreciate that spirit and your persistence. So thank you, and hopefully over time you'll create the success that you want to. So thank you for your efforts. And I know it's not easy, so appreciate you staying positive. I did a couple of chamber events and went to the mixer at Truett-Hearst. Had a lot of, you were there too, Councilmember Edwards, and it was a lot of great conversations happened at that event, so I'm glad I made it to that. They did their first cluster conversation, which is sort of a new direction, different from the I forget what the chamber walks thing. And it was cool because they had the theme was new businesses. So all those new businesses were there able to riff with each other about their issues with the city and just getting started in general. And it was really a great conversation. I learned a lot. City Manager Kay was there, Scott Ivan was there, and it was a really frank and open conversation. I think everybody thought it was super productive. So I'm glad to see that new direction with the chamber and I look forward to the next one. The Healdsburg High School Scholarship Night was a huge highlight, not just because my son was there, our Chief Bosa's son was there, and it was a great night for the community because this class, I wasn't really aware of this, but there's just a lot of academic energy, and the applications were super strong according to everybody who was passing out scholarships, and there was the GPAs are super high with this group. And so it's a really proud moment for HHS and for the community, and the kids did well. And it's just a great group of kids. And it's, it just makes you feel like the future is going to be bright when you have dedicated, smart kids like that going out. And so that was really inspiring. And then I would add that I was asked to marry some friends of mine last weekend, which was super fun. And so it's something that you get to sign the document if you're an elected official. And I know a couple of people have been tapped to do this. So my friends asked me and I did it, and it was really fun. I enjoyed that experience.
That's impressive. I like that.
Yeah.
So I was on the scholarship committee for the Barnes and McCord scholarships for the high school. So I wasn't able to attend the passing out of the celebration, but I was very impressed with all of the applications. So I get to read through all of them, and not just the GPAs, but the essays that they write, and why they want to do what they're going to do, and they're about their families, and it is inspiring. And I think Healdsburg High School is pretty impressive. They do a really great job. So and that you get to do when you're the mayor, although as long as your kids, as long as your kids aren't going and up for one, it'll be okay.
They will be, so we'll have to talk about that.
Okay.
I would like to add one thing. While we're talking about the Healdsburg High School, I did attend their car show and got to take a walk through their shop and what they're doing there. And they're doing a really good job of getting those students prepared for future. We're talking about not every child is college bound. So it's really nice to see they've got a really good automotive program there to get these students in a different direction.
Yeah, good point. I also attended the ECA Public Officials Night dinner, and Councilmember Higley was there too. A lot of good conversations about that. All the elected officials, not just elected, so it's public officials. So people are working in public capacity. It's pretty interesting. I had to leave early, so I didn't get the big steak that they give everyone. You did too. That's the big meal. And then I also did the Enzo Village tour over the weekend, and then I got to also meet and have lunch with the new executive director of Enzo Village last week. And he's a great guy, very impressive. He's pretty new, I think. So I know they're very interested in being part of the community and whatnot. So I think we're going to see more and more from them.
I met with David Green, right? Yeah. Inspired by their willingness to participate in the community. It's going to be really great.
Yeah, I think so too. So, and that's it. So if we've got nothing else, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at